Well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today as we go through the top 10 signs it's time to reevaluate your endpoint security. A couple of trends and interesting things as we see across the market is, the cyber threats is not just going after your global 1,000 customers. 21% of small, medium businesses report a data breach within the last 24 months. And that's a 17% increase from the previous 2 years before there. 41% of small businesses said they were hit by a breach costing over $50,000 to recover. If you look at the threat landscape, again, it's not just enterprise, it's small, medium business and everything in between. Cyber criminals are coming out with over 9 million new malware variants every single. So with that being said, where do all the cyber attacks begin? 70% of all cyber attacks begin on the endpoint. So let's dive into the top 10. First and foremost, you're still using signature-based security products. And if you go back 25 years ago, the threat landscape was very, very different than it was today. And in large part, you look at the 9 million new variants of malware created every single month. Back then, with signature-based in the early 90s, it was a lot easier for an individual to see a malware, create a signature, and send it out. But the problem is by the late 90s, it really started showing some kinks in the armor. We saw that with the 1999 with the Melissa virus, later in 2000 with the I Love You virus, where signatures just could not keep up with the attacks and the type of attacks that we see out there. Number two, when you're using a signature-based security solution, you have to accept a miss rate. And a big piece of that is ransomware. And the reason for that is if you look at the types of ransomware, take Emotet, for example, the polymorphic characteristics and complexities that these offered as signatures got created, they would simply morph into something different and simply bypass. We saw that with a very large hospital chain in the United States where they were running a signature-based legacy AV solution. And while they were running, they got attacked with Emotet. For a week, they sat in a conference room trying to come up with new signatures to combat this. And every time they came out with a new signature, it would morph into something different and just bypass and completely work itself around the signature. The third big sign is you still perform regular system scans. It's really no secret that legacy AV solutions rely on resource-intensive system scans to discover malware. These scans may be scheduled, on demand, or occur after the signatures are updated. Regardless of when they are or when they're performed, the performance impact across the entire network is undeniable. Typically, these are going to be, or you're going to try to run overnights or weekends, creating just a burden on the admins. And anytime it runs into the day, you're usually going to impact performance and work. Now, as we look in the enterprise of today and how we work and consume data, we work around the clock. No longer is it convenient for me to not have access in the evening, early mornings, or over a weekend just to do my daily job. Number four, the fourth sign, your new PC seems slower. So many enterprises implement this layered security model where solutions to new threats are built upon existing ones. So over time, the accumulation of security layers puts an enormous strain on system resources and negatively impacts system performance. So slow PCs may be one sign that it's time to reevaluate your endpoint solution. Number five, you still use an on-premise server for antivirus management. And this is really as we've moved into really a cloud and a cloud-first world. If you cannot manage your antivirus from the cloud, it's definitely time to update and start looking at different solutions. When we look at antivirus, and I talk to executives about antivirus and endpoint protection, we need solutions that work regardless of where the employees are, whether that's a air gap environment where we don't have outside access and Wi-Fi access, or to different employees such as myself, a remote employee who's in and out of offices, coffee shops, airports, online, offline. So how do I extend the same level of endpoint protection to my user, regardless of them being on the network, off the network, even connected to Wi-Fi, or completely offline? Number six, you spend way too much time managing your antivirus. So every minute that your IT team spends managing your antivirus solution is a minute taken away from core business productivity or from strategic projects that could proactively shore up your defenses. I'm going to document this at the very end of this webcast, but this is the burden and time spent on admins who have to do everything from the daily management, policy updates, signatures, push outs, to remediating attacks, to even re-imaging of systems and machines. I recently was speaking with a very large pharmaceutical company, and with this company, they were having over 3,000 system re-images every quarter. Now, this is based on compromised malware. They were running a legacy AV solution. And when these systems got impacted, you were talking about taking a help desk, creating trouble tickets, loss of productivity for that user, and then having an admin spend their time, again, re-imaging over 3,000 systems every single quarter. Those, again, are telltale signs that maybe it's time to start reevaluating different endpoint solutions that will allow me now to take my admin team and shift them to more strategic projects that I really want them focused on. Number 7, you spend too much time responding to false alerts. This really goes back to a very common problem that you have with legacy AV that are signature-based solutions. And the problem with the signature-based solutions, again, it goes back to the polymorphic viruses that simply disguise themselves, they change code, and it creates a lot of different false positives. And if you go back and you look through the history of a lot of breaches, it is this big spike in false positives that either take our eyes off the ball or lead to us missing what becomes a legitimate and serious attack. Number 8, you are looking at a endpoint detection and response solution. Does your endpoint protection platform consume too many resources and deliver layer after layer of inconsistent results? What I'm finding is more and more CISOs are now looking at either adding, or do I supplement, or trying to answer that question? Do I replace my endpoint protection platform with a detect and respond product? And I'm not saying detect and response is not important. I do think it's important. The problem is that we've kind of created this industry where we're looking at, is it just detect and respond? So are we going to accept the inevitable that the attack's going to happen and it's going to go through? With that being said, is that really the best approach? Looking at, is it time to bring an EDR to either replace my endpoint protection or to supplement it, is definitely a telltale sign. It's time to kind of reevaluate our strategy here. Number 9, your endpoint security strategy is entirely reactive. So if we are waiting, the problem whenever we talk about signature-based attacks or signature-based security solutions is, number 1, there has to be a patient zero. It's ineffective against ransomware because of the way that they're morphing. It's ineffective against zero-day because there has to be a patient zero. A signature has to be created, plus that signature then has to be pushed out to all of my endpoints. So if I am waiting for something, the signature to be created and for it to be sent out, and hoping it's not a polymorphic that's going to change and flip around and slip right through my legacy AV solution, at that point, I'm just reacting to the inevitable instead of really getting out in front in a prevent first type of a strategy. And finally, number 10, you have to upgrade your OS to accommodate your antivirus. And I definitely see this a lot in enterprises, in the enterprise size customers, where we have solutions that are based on legacy systems that are critical for our business. We are not able to move off of those legacy. My current AV, my legacy AV, is moving off of the support of that operating system. So how do I maintain that protection for those type of systems that they may be old, it might be an outdated operating system, but again, it's critical for my business that I keep using that legacy solution. Top 10 reasons why I would move from a legacy AV or signature-based AV into a next-gen AV. Effective prevention against preventing ransomware and zero-day attacks. This really started to show its head as the malware authors got a lot more sophisticated. You know, from the early 2000s when signature-based really had their heyday and were effective at that time, by the end of the 90s, they were no longer effective. You have to accept a miss rate. And typically this miss rate runs in the teens. It's not uncommon for me to talk to companies and prospects that are running miss rates of 15, 16, 17% based on their legacy AV. The other large problem, and we talked a little bit about this with the reactionary, is if there is no signature, the malware must execute before it's ever going to be detected. Then I have the bring a human in, and that the human then has to create a signature. And then now I'm creating another burden for my admin team because now they've got to send out the signatures and updates. And then finally, again, the strain on the admin teams, and from the daily management, the remediating attacks, the re-imaging of machines. I worked for two very large technology companies in my career. And one of I was there for late 90s, early 2000. And I remember Friday mornings was the day our computers ran their daily scan. So me and all my colleagues, that was the morning we would go down and have breakfast, because we knew we would be, basically our systems would be shot and the performance would be so low, it would just be frustrating. So we'd go eat breakfast together on that day until we discovered I could suspend or pause and run that scan later. Now, once I discovered there, I joke and say probably went years, 7, 8 years before I ran another scan on my system. Again, we know it's pushed, but at the end of the day, we know there's a problem with legacy AV. We know that it's ineffective. We know that there's better signatures, which has given rise to this next gen AV market. If you kind of look at where we've evolved to, I can tell you in traveling, I've come across tons of executives that are now looking at do I need to go to a next gen AV? What is the other solutions? What's an alternative? Now, some of that's been driven by acquisitions in the marketplace, and others of them is just realizing that this miss rate is not acceptable, that I have to find a better way and a better solution, which has kind of led to this movement to kind of, let's start looking at legacy AV. So that kind of takes us back to BlackBerry Cylance and looking at Cylance and where Cylance got their start. This legacy AV problem is where Cylance was created. And I love this quote from Henry Ford. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And really at the point of legacy AV, signature base are full of issues and challenges. Really, industry needed something different. It needed a radical change. And that's where Stu McClure came out. And what he created was really a data science company that is the 9th biggest investor in artificial intelligence behind, there is no other security company in the top 50. I don't even believe there's a security company in the top 100 of that list. So he basically created this data science company, and he used the data science to combat cyber and cyber threats. So it was this radical approach that created this prevention first approach to security. So what does that really mean? If we look across the bottom axis, we're looking at the automated, semi-automated, and manual, and really the cost of security. On the up and down axis, we're looking at your time to security. Cylance takes a prevent first. Using artificial intelligence, it is this fully automated, it's a lot lower cost, and it's a lot faster time to security. And if we look at the malware and we look at the bad actors out there that are coming up with the malware, whether it's state-sponsored or well-funded organizations, they're using artificial intelligence. They're well-funded. They're running at machine speed. So it is this need for us as, to protect our organizations is to have this fully automated prevent first approach. Now, we all know we don't prevent everything. Nobody in the world prevents everything, but our efficacy rate is north of 99%. So it's through the roof, the ability to prevent at an automated state, a much faster time of security at a much lower cost. Now, that's not to say that we don't do detection and do response. We do it very, very well. But the difference is we start with this fully automated prevention first. When we start looking at a lot of these vendors out there and the competition, especially as you get into the next gen space of antivirus space, the competition starts in this detect, which is semi-automated, or the manual respond. With that being said, that's a lot more costly. And as we all know, there's a massive shortage of skilled IT security professionals out there. Where we see that shortage is really in this top right of this quadrant. So at BlackBerry Cylance, we do the full prevention as well as detect and respond with our AI platform. We have a full list of services from staff augmentation all the way through the ability to do a managed detect response, where we can do the prevention, detection, and response, fully manage it for you. So we have that list of a catalog of services to help customers. Now, our Predictive Nature, or that prevent first company that I've ever seen that went out there and had a third party validate and test our solution. And basically what it showed was that we were able to stop threats as far back as 25 months before they were ever seen in the wild. So what does that mean? That means if I was to take my laptop, turn off all Wi-Fi, lock it up in a safe, in a vault for 25 months or 20 months. And I come back and I open up that vault. I do not turn on the Wi-Fi. All I do is I take a USB key, I stick it in my laptop with that day's, so it'd be 2021, December 2021, that day's most current threats that they're seeing, first time they're being seen out in the wild, and I run it. We were able to stop it on a consistent basis. If you're running a signature-based solution, there is no way for it to stop it because it had never been seen. There would never have been a signature created. And had there been something in the 2 years in between, then it still wouldn't have been pushed. The update wouldn't have been on your side. Does a total economic impact report. And there's on our website, we actually have the webcast from this we just did last week with Chris Sherman and the Forrester team. And basically what this is the total economic impact report is that we nominate a customer, and from that point, we remove ourselves from the process. Forrester interviews the customer, does an in-depth study. And what they found was this customer had over 40,000 endpoints. They had moved from one of the larger, well-known legacy AV solutions, which was a signature-based solutions, and they had moved over to BlackBerry Cylance. What they found, the numbers are astronomical. Again, a 99% return on their investment, a 97% reduction or cut in machine re-imaging, 95% faster investigations and remediations, and that's based off of the SIM, things coming in out of the SIM. Again, 90% reduction in full-time employees. They went from as many as 5 full-time employees just to manage, do the updates, do the patching, down to a half a person to run and manage our solution. That's an astronomical number, especially as we talk about the shortage of skilled IT security professionals. If I can now turn around and shift my staff to more strategic projects that help us to be more productive, to help move the business forward, instead of just keeping the lights on the antivirus product. And finally, the 25%, what an interesting thing that had happened was this company had a attack underway. When we deployed, we immediately had picked up on it, and within an hour had it fully quarantined. It was a ransomware attack. So there was attack, there was a cleanup that was needed. But because we were able to discover it when we did, versus it running its full course, it did see about a 25% reduction in cost. One of the cool things that I get the bragging rights to is I was the very first BlackBerry Cylance hired employee, meaning I started on April 1st. I was the first hired person after the acquisition finalized. And I often get asked, why would you go there? Or BlackBerry Cylance, what's the story there? And it's really an amazing story, which is a big reason that brought me here and why I chose to come here. First and foremost, Cylance, the very first company to apply artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science to endpoint protection. One of the cool things that Cylance is that they were able to take and they use the cloud, and we run all of our algorithms in the cloud, but we're able to take those algorithms, shrink them down, and run them on the endpoint and the agent side on the endpoint. And that's huge if you think about it, because now when I go to air gap or I'm offline, it provides me the same level of protection as anywhere else. Again, we were a rapid growing cybersecurity company, the first company to ever reach, the fastest company, I should say, to reach $100 million. We have a complete portfolio of services from compromised assessments through, again, that managed detect and response, through full staff augmentations that we can provide customers. We currently protect all 7 G7 governments, over 8,000 customers, and 500 million endpoints. And those are endpoints ranging from your laptops and PCs to mobile devices to automobiles, including space stations. With that being said, we're already in 170 million vehicles, protecting and securing them. And if you kind of look at where we are today and where we're going as an industry, have the meeting point where we really have come together from an endpoint and mobiles kind of bled into each other. And now it's bleeding into the Internet of Things. And being able to take the data science of Cylance and the market leadership in BlackBerry, from automobiles to medical devices to surgical machines to, again, 170 million vehicles, you can see how we extend through the full Internet of Things. So it's a very powerful story, and it really brings it together. If any of the signs or those 10 signs that we walk through indicate your environment, maybe it's time to have a talk with us, see what we could potentially do for you. With that being said, for those customers, and there's a lot that I've spoken to over even just the last couple of months that are looking to migrate and make the move from legacy antivirus to a prevention first approach, we are running a program to help people migrate off. That program gives you an additional 6 months of free product. and free migration. So we'll help make that move very simple. There's more than happy to go through the details with anybody. But with that being said, I'm going to open it up to questions and answers. Okay, so one question that I am getting around the program that we're offering. So there is no minimum of endpoints for the migration services. That is for 1,000 or more endpoints for the migration services. For the free 6 months, there is no limit to that. The minimum is 1 year. If you wanted to go 3 years, it does add the 6 months to it. So with that being said, I don't see any other questions here. My name is Bob Slocum. My email address I'll put up here for everybody. If there's ever anything that I can do or answer for you, I get the pleasure of traveling the globe. I get to speak to a lot of different CISOs and CIOs from many different organizations from all different sizes. It's an exciting point. Big reason, again, I showed you the reason why I came to BlackBerry Cylance in the future. Our ability to secure products. One of the things that I knew before I ever came into the company was that it was solutions that just worked. It eliminated the headache for admins and users. And again, at the end of the day, it just worked. I thank you so much for joining us today. If there's anything that we can do or any further questions, please reach out. Thank you and have a wonderful day.